Hey everybody, welcome to another Wednesday here on the Hang Up. I'm still Matt Dillahunty every single week when you tune in, although evidently if I'm not here, which is the case on some weeks, somebody else takes over and that's awesome. You're watching The Line, and it's been an incredibly busy, and April is absolutely going to be my busiest and wildest month. Um, Probably all the way till maybe October or something like that. But we had a total solar eclipse this past week. I had already done a debate for Easter weekend on Good Friday or on Good Friday in Tampa. Got back, did the eclipse. Just got a couple of quick comments about that, and I need to let you guys know what's happening here at the line. And I know Jimmy made a post about how you're going to see him a little less for the next month or so because he's dealing with some health issues. But I talked to him today. He sounds good and in good spirits. But yes, he's going to be out for a little bit, taking care of some health issues. And Arden and I are going to be busy with reptile shows this weekend, next weekend, and the weekend after that. This weekend is the North American Reptile Breeder Convention in Dallas, which is absolutely our biggest event of the year, and will be until we are also going up to the North American Reptile Breeder Convention in, let's say, Tinley Park in Chicago and Stromberg. So yeah, the other, and St. Louis. There's three more of these. They're all up there in the Chicago and St. Louis area, and this one's in Dallas. We're looking forward to it. We've got an amazing new banner, new logos. We've got, I think I'm taking 46 baby ball pythons. What are we taking? Like eight or 10 crested geckos, something like that?
Or probably like 11. There's only one I want to keep out of 12.
Cool. So we'll have almost a dozen crested geckos, a bunch of ball pythons and everything. But I already posted. If you're in the Dallas area, or you can get to the Dallas area and you want to come hang out with us this weekend, I posted a map of the entire convention floor and showing the corner that we're essentially in booth 265, and you can come over and say hi and hang out and check out the great snakes that we produced this year. Say hi to us, get some pictures. I think admission's like $10 to generally get in. It is now there are specific restrictions because Dallas sucks and is absolutely ignorant when it comes to things like this. So there's going to be limits as to what animals are actually going to be at this NARBC. But it should still be an amazingly good show. And for those of you with kids who are going to be constantly begging you for reptiles, you can come to a thing like this. You don't have to get a reptile, and it's like better than a trip to a zoo, in my opinion, because you're going to get to see loads and loads of snakes and lizards and all kinds of cool stuff. And there's tons of these all around, but NARBC is the biggest one. Anyway, I didn't start Wednesday's show just to advertise what we're doing, but to let you guys know that I'm not going to be on the Sunday show as much. Neither is Jimmy, but there are people scheduled, and I will be on the Sunday show after dark. Not this weekend, but next weekend, because we're doing a show, the Herps Reptile Show in Leander, just north of Austin. So we'll be, basically home all the time, just up there from time to time. We are hoping to actually sell some of our wonderful, beautiful ball pythons and crested geckos, but you can come out and just hang out, have a good time, and see what goes on. It's been interesting because the eclipse happened, and there were lots of friends of ours from all over the country that were originally going to come down. We were originally going to have LineCon this past weekend to coincide with the eclipse. Is probably a good idea for several reasons that we didn't do that. Not the least of which is that the weather didn't cooperate particularly well. We got really, really fortunate. Eric from Skepticism and Scoundrels was down here, and myself and him and Arden basically walked 100 yards or so from our house, because 100 yards from my house is the other side of a parking lot that was in the line of totality, on the edge of it, but we were definitely in the line of totality. And while it was incredibly cloudy and huge thunderstorms later in the day, it cleared just enough at the exact minute or so of totality to allow us to get a really good view of it, and to I shot a quick video that's up on Facebook right now. There was a joke picture I put up. There was just a picture of clouds, and I was like, "Oh, the eclipse is starting," because you couldn't see anything. It was an interesting, fun day. There were moments of clear skies, and you could see the moon, as it started making a thing, and then it clouded up more, and then it got better. And I got a really good quickie video of totality, and you can hear us all. I mean, I'm not as much of an eclipse geek as some of my friends are, but all three of us were standing there just going, wow, wow. Oh, there it is. It's, because the moon hits and then the corona appears from outside. And there's like this great little dance, and the clouds made it so that you could just see it well enough. You couldn't see it through your glasses at all. So you had to take glasses off and do the stupid thing and look up bare-eyed, but the filter of the clouds allowed you to at least get a quick glimpse, and then you can use your phone for the rest of it. But the nice thing was being able to look around down at ground level during the totality, where there was a slight shift in color, and it was a little bit darker. Evidently, it was a massive security risk, according to Fox News, because Fox was letting people know that that there was a spot along the southern border that was going to have 4 minutes of totality, and that this was just going to be a boon for migrants and drug smugglers and all the people who, for some reason, decided not to cross at night when it was dark. They're going to scramble across in the twilight colored 4-minute space at the border. It sounds like a massive security risk to me, and I really hope that the brave vigilantes down there on our border, that they're all safe and happily repelled the 4-minute invaders. But dumber than a sack of hammers, those guys over at Fox, spinning absolutely anything and everything, including an eclipse, into something about, the election and promoting their potential candidate. When I say that we're going to be gone and we're hoping to actually sell some snakes, for those of you who don't follow the ball python market, there are people who are very concerned, because what happened is, some of you are like, hang on, are we just going to talk about snakes in the ball python market for a while? Yes, we are. Because at the beginning of COVID, there were people who were looking for ways to make money, and there's a lot of things that we couldn't do. There's the possibility of breeding some snakes and producing some snakes that are worth quite a bit of money. It's entirely possible for you to buy a couple of snakes for maybe $1,000 or $2,000, and a year later produce 10 or 11 eggs that are all worth $3,000 or $4,000 a piece, or at least, that was the thought at the beginning of the boom. And there were people who got involved, in particular with ball pythons, although there's been a lot of growth in a lot of areas. Western hognose have done amazing. Yes, I'm not answering phone calls during the show. Western hognose have done amazing. There's a lot of others that have done amazing. But there were people who bought snakes kind of looking at the 2 or 3 year stretch, because if you buy babies, it's going to be somewhere between 1.5 to 2 years before a male ball python, for example, is ready to breed, and somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 years before a female is ready to breed, assuming they grow. They're good eaters. They grow at a healthy rate, and ball pythons are notoriously picky on some occasions. And a lot of people got into it. And what Arden and I did was, we loved snakes. We loved reptiles. We got into it as people were starting to get out. So what I did was I bought up collections of adult breeders that people who got into the breeding game were starting to get rid of at much lower prices, so that everything was as cost effective as possible. Trying to be as smart about building a hobby that could be a little bit of income as well. And what happened to the people who spent thousands and thousands of dollars at the beginning of COVID and then saw absolutely no return on investment, because they bought babies and, they, at 2 or 3 years, they get down the road and now they're busy with other things and they don't have the time to do this. And the snakes haven't produced any money. And it's like, let's just sell them. And I couldn't have been happier. I mean, there's a reason we produced like 70 some odd babies last year in the first full year of focused breeding on this. And it's doing great. But now there's people who are like, oh my gosh, the market, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. And when we're sitting at these conventions, I'm often surrounded by other vendors who made good money during a hot period. And now that it's tapered off a little bit, kind of the way my neighbors sold across the street, sold their house for what I think is almost a ridiculous amount of money, where people from California were flying to Texas and paying $50,000 or $100,000 over asking price to buy certain houses. It's not worth as much as it was 2 years ago when that happened. But now people are freaking out, and there's this conspiracy-minded discussion going on all the time. There was even somebody, one of the vendors was at one of the things with the only thing Biden fixed was an election. So, I mean, there's full on conspiracy minded nonsense going on there. And I'm sitting here going, hang on a minute. Isn't the economy in general doing better? Now, that doesn't mean that people are necessarily going to come in and be spending, $600 or $700 for a pet snake or a pet reptile or anything like that. But my general perception was that there had been improvements to the economy. Whether you credit Biden or not, I don't give a shit. But just generally, I thought the economy was doing better, the numbers that I saw. And yet, when I'm at these things, all I hear about, the economy is just terrible. The economy is terrible, and Biden screwed us all up, and everything's just awful, and it's a lot of pro-Trump stuff. So since I don't know squat about money, and get poked fun of and laughed at every time I dig into anything remotely financial, although I will say I think I made really good decisions on everything to do with Epic Loot Exotics. Not the least of which was partnering up with Arden, because that's the smartest decision I could have made. But tonight I brought Phil Ferguson in to talk about how is the economy actually? What the hell do we know? What's going on? Should I have bought these snakes? Is it all going to fall apart? Are we going to be on, bread lines in a week or so? What happens if Trump wins? What happens if Biden wins? Holy crap, Phil, am I going to go broke?
Well, I think the nice thing about the chicken or the snakes is you could always eat them.
True.
Tastes like chicken. So you have some food breeding in your house. I really don't know anything about snakes other than they're cute and cuddly. How's that?
Yes.
The economy, though, the funny thing with the economy is it's probably the biggest problem is that it's still too hot. It's too good. And there's still forces and trying to push up inflation, or as some people will say, and I think there's some merit to it, companies grabbing more money and being greedy and raising prices because they think they can get away with it. And that's probably a result of a monopoly power, which we should have been thinking about a decade ago and 20 years ago, not necessarily just today. But the market's up smartly. The economy is growing. A lot of people have jobs, a lot of new jobs. Unemployment is below 4%. And the inflation, while not at the 2% stated target from the Fed, is below 4%, which is way better than the 9% it was a year ago. And one thing that I hear from a lot of people that it's just not clear, inflation is a measure of the rate of change currently or for the last year. And so if something like bacon, for example, went from $6 to $10, if inflation stopped, if inflation was 0, the bacon would still be $10. So the prices generally don't go down. The really funny thing from an economic, cultural standpoint, you don't want the opposite. You generally don't want prices to go down. That's called deflation. And the problem is that you could run the risk that nobody wants to buy anything if they think a year from now it's going to be 20 or 30 or 40% lower price. So you end up with an entire economy where everyone hoards all of their money and doesn't buy anything, and that can disable an economy completely, just break everything because nobody's buying. So we don't really want anything like that, but economy is good. Haven't mentioned yet, my podcast is The Phil Ferguson Show, and I talk about politics, religion, and money, the 3 things you should not discuss with your family. And I just had up a episode going through the mathematics of an annuity. And it's one of those things, the first time I did one of these where it was 20 or 30 minutes of math, I was concerned that no one would like it. But the first time I did it, every time I've done it since, and this has probably been almost 2 years since I did a new one, the emails I get are wonderful, delightful, because people are saying, finally. I hear people saying, don't get an annuity, but they don't explain why to not get an annuity. And I went through the detailed mathematics of how they work. And when I say work, they make money for the insurance company and not for you. So there's a lot of that. I also got to see the eclipse, drove from Chicago to Southern Illinois, and it ended up being 90% clear, and most of the clouds are very, very thin, light, high atmosphere clouds that the sunlight burns right through, so they didn't cause a problem at all. Probably 4 minutes of totality for us. Absolutely amazing. The problem that I'd calculated, but I'd underestimated. When we were done, we wanted to drive towards Orlando, which is where I live, and we were going to stop, which we did, in Chattanooga, and it would be a 5-hour drive from Carbondale, Illinois to Chattanooga. And I thought, traffic's going to be bad. I know that it's not going to be 5 hours. It's probably going to be 7 or 8 hours. Ended up being 11 hours of driving.
Oh, wow.
And the first 9 hours, we did 200 miles. So an average of about 22 miles an hour for 9 hours. And it is debilitating to see your estimated time of arrival, in 5 hours. You drive 2 hours, it's still 5 hours. You drive 3 hours, it still says 5 hours. You drive 7 hours, it still says 4 hours. Yeah. Because Google was looking, at the current traffic, 100 miles away was pretty wide open. But in the 2 or 3 hours it took us to get the 100 miles, here we all are again.
Yeah.
Too many cars.
You're in the moving thing. And so it's calculating based on what would normally, be normal traffic if you're all moving in a group. Yeah.
And it was fascinating because I'm thinking to myself, why are we going 20? Why are we going 10? Why are we going 30? There aren't that many. At least once we got, into Tennessee and Kentucky, there's not more cars getting on than normal. Why do we go 20? Can't everybody just go faster and we'd all go faster together? But
yeah,
it doesn't work that way. I would be fascinated to read research on automotive queue theory and interstates. But there we were, 11 hours to drive what should have been 5 hours. So we had that experience.
Yeah, Google does an amazing job, at estimating traffic and everything else. So it doesn't surprise me that there's going to be difficulties. But I want to get back to an economy thing here. If the economy is good, but the perception of the economy is bad, I despise this notion that perception is reality, because that's not true, but it's undeniable that our perception of reality informs our actions, which then impacts reality. So if the economy is good, but people generally don't think it's good, how does that compare to an economy that's good that people think is good?
Yeah, the funny thing is, a lot of the research that I've heard about or skimmed over, you would think that if 70% of the population thinks the economy is bad, the normal response from humans is to kind of hunker down and save a little bit of money for a rainy day or losing your job. But people are currently acting collectively as a whole as if the economy is strong, which is part of why the economy is strong. So the average person, majority of people in this country, might say the economy is soft or weak or bad, but they're still spending and they have money to spend. Now, of course, always, today is no different than 5 years ago or 10 years ago. There's a lot of people in this country that just don't make enough. They don't have enough. And I really have issues, and I don't know there's an easy way to fix it, but we used to have an ethos, 50 years ago maybe, where people who run companies and own companies can become rich. And occasionally there's the uber wealthy, but now it's more chic, I guess. I don't know, or the wealth is even more concentrated than before. And it's I've heard other people say it, but we really shouldn't have billionaires. I mean, once you have a couple 100 million, you really, what is it you don't have that you need? And so you kind of get this thing where there's some people in the United States that probably deserve a dragon that's going to show up and guard their hoard for them and just take it away from them. So how do we fix that? One idea is wealth tax. If you got $1 billion, you got to pay 2% tax. And then people that have $1 billion scream, "Oh no, if you tax me 2% on my $1 billion, I might go from 1 billion to 990 million, whatever." That's stupid. 980 million. You're still basically a billionaire. You can buy whatever you want. But for a country that has the average wealth that the United States has, for people to be living in on the street and in tents and in boxes, it shouldn't be that way. We have the money.
I saw a meme. I saw a meme yesterday. I didn't bother to check the math. It's probably not completely correct, but I think it took Jeff Bezos 13 or 18 seconds or something to earn in 2023 more than the average American will earn in their lifetime.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Every 18 seconds or so, he earns that much. When it comes to, so we don't know Trump's net worth, but we know that he's already been found civilly liable for manipulating the values of properties and things like this, and is potentially, barring a reversal of the decision, going to owe $500 million or more. And to people like me, that's just like those numbers don't make any sense to me. Oh, $500 million here, $500 million there. So he sets up, or somebody else on his behalf sets up, a stock that's based partially on Truth Social, but it was bought by a company that was already publicly traded, even though they had to say that they hadn't negotiated any sort of deal. And now there's an investigation as to whether or not they broke that rule. But the stock price blows up because there's a lot of it is just, we're speculating. And so if everybody goes and buys it, the price starts going up and up and up, even though there's absolutely no value. I think Truth Social is not expected to ever be profitable, and made less money than like a single McDonald's, had less revenue than a single McDonald's restaurant. And there's like a billion of those or whatever. And so there are people who have been calling it pump and dump stocks. There's people who've been calling it meme stocks. How is it possible that, because it seems to me that only the super wealthy could be in a position to create a publicly traded stock for something with no product, no revenue, nothing that anybody should value other than this person's name, and have it make $1 billion in the first day, or $2 billion in the first day, even if it drops off afterwards. To have a spike like that, why do we have a system where that's even possible? And can Trump use that, or is he, because there's like a 6-month gap where he can't sell, or for various other reasons, is this not going to make a difference?
Given his devotees and worshipers, it's probably going to make a difference. It's just not going to be anywhere near as big as it might have been. So the company that bought Truth Social is a type of company called a SPAC, S-P-A-C. It's a special purchase acquisition company. They started making these in the 90s, and they were still small time until the last few years, where there's SPACs everywhere. And the idea of a SPAC is that it doesn't produce anything, it doesn't sell anything, it just collects money up to 2 years. And within that 2-year time frame, it has to buy something, or it has to give all the money back to the investors. So there was a SPAC that was set up for the purpose of buying Truth Social, but then said that it wasn't set up for that. And so that's where multiple people have gone and done things that are technically illegal, and some people have already pleaded guilty for doing that. And or they would tell friends that they know it's going to buy Truth Social, when you can't do that. You can't reveal this private information. The SPAC is, or was, a publicly traded company. So theoretically, the SPAC is sitting on billions of dollars, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. and it buys something that's an ongoing business that's private, not publicly traded. And so the SPAC bought Truth Social, and then since the SPAC owns Truth Social, it can now name itself whatever it wants to, and it's the Donald J. Trump media empire, or whatever name they picked. And then, of course, the calculation of the value of a stock is the most recent listed trade price times the number of shares outstanding. Right. So if there's 100 million shares and they sell for $1 a piece, or if there's a transaction for $1, it's a $100 million company. If one share sells for $10 and you extrapolate that, in an instant, the company could theoretically go from 100 million to $1 billion in value, because value is calculated as traded price times shares.
Sure. Just to be clear, I think that's so important for everybody to grasp that we kind of need to do it again. If we set up a company with 1 million shares of stock and we do one trade where you buy one single share of stock from me for $100, then that company is now worth $100 million.
Yes. Yeah. And so if the price is 10 times that, it's not 100 million, it's $1 billion. And there's so many shares outstanding on this, and there were, at least temporarily, people that were willing to pay 50, 60 plus dollars a share to play along. And there's a growing attitude in the US that, like with meme stocks, that the line goes up, printer goes burr, all of that stuff, where it doesn't really matter if the stock's worth anything as long as I can sell my shares and what they call in the industry a greater fool. So it doesn't matter if you pay $200 for a Trump share as long as you can sell it for $205 or $210. The problem is that at some point, some people figure out that it's worthless. And I would say that Truth Social at this point in time is not even worth zero. Revenue of something like 4 million, losses of 58, 60 million because of all the expenses to run the company. Absolutely no conceivable way that they're going to make money. And so this gets into the pump and dump, which is wickedly illegal, but yet here they're doing it in plain sight. So theoretically, Trump owns 60% of the company, and his portion was worth something like 7 billion, and now it's 3 billion because the stock fell by half. The problem you have, if you own 60% of the shares of a company, as you start to sell them, you are increasing the supply. If there's not a related increase in demand, basic economics 101, supply versus demand, the price goes down. So one problem Trump could have is if he goes to, let's see, what is it now? I just pulled this up before the show. It's $34 a share. If he goes to sell it at 34, he might sell several hundreds or several thousand shares, but he's got 60 million shares or something crazy like that. So as he keeps selling more shares and no one wants to buy them at 35, he would lower them to 32, and then the 30, and then the 25, and then 21, and then 18, and then 10. And since he's so desperate for money, the very fact of him trying to sell 60% of a company or some portion thereof on the open market would result most likely in a dramatic drop in the valuation of the company as a whole. And if I'm Trump, wow, that's something you don't want to entertain for too long. I want to get the fuck out. I want to get my money because I know this is a Ponzi, right? This is a pyramid. This is tulip bulbs. This is worse than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's worth zero. That's way more than this company is worth. So he's got to get out. Now, the one thing that could change all of this, and we were talking about what a share is worth, and what a share is worth is that thing that goes across the bottom of your screen, that little ticker, right?
Yeah.
So if one person agree, and this same thing happened with cryptocurrencies where they would pump the prices, as long as there's a transaction, even if it's only one share for $50, then the price per share is $50. The normal stock market assumes that the people who are buying and or selling are good faith actors transacting at an arm's length. Now,
and not your buddy logging in every day to buy one piece of stock for $80.
Right. Now, what could happen is someone with a whole lot of money, and they don't have any better idea what to do with it. And this can be an American, This can be someone from the Chinese Communist Party. This can be a Russian oligarch. This can be a Saudi prince or a Qatar prince. If they say, hey, look, I know this company's worth nothing. That's okay. I'm going to buy $1 billion of stock from Donald J. Trump at X dollars per share. Donald J. Trump sells his stock for $1 billion, or a portion of his stock for $1 billion. And now the Saudi prince owns it for $1 billion. And they may have bought it with the full knowledge and understanding as a sophisticated investor that they just flushed $1 billion down the toilet. But they didn't. It went to Trump. And so when Trump gets a couple billion out of this, in this theoretical scenario, then they can call him up if he wins, or even if he doesn't win, he still has power. He's running the Senate now, and he's not even, or the House of Representatives, and he's not even elected official. If you give him literally billions of dollars, you now have some pull where you can ask for a favor back. And if you have an international oil business or lumber or coal or gold, diamonds, a lot of these things that make ridiculous amounts of profits, if you spend $1 billion to grease the gears so that your company can go from $5 billion in profit to $12 billion in profit in the next year because of something Donald Trump did for you as a favor, well, now the money you spent was an incredibly wise investment. You invest $1 billion that goes to Trump, and then he does something that makes you $5 billion. Absolutely, from removing, making this aethical, not anti-ethical, but they don't care about ethics. It's not pro or con. It's all about the money. If they can put in $1 billion and end up making $5 billion the next year, that's a win-win. That's a smart play, like Trump might say. It's all about the money. So it just depends. Does everybody run away from the stock because it's truly worthless? Or do a few really, really painfully rich people step up and voluntarily buy shares from Trump to hold at the price so Trump can get out? I don't know which way it's going to go. It could be zero.
But also,
right now. Yeah, you can't sustain it
at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, at some point it will collapse, and it will collapse sooner than Bitcoin because the company has to put out numbers. There's legal requirements to be a publicly traded stock and disclosures and things. For now, people have pretty much ignored what's been released. But at some point, people will come to their senses and it'll go poof. Whether that's before September or after, I don't know. It might be tomorrow. It might be August. If it's something before September and the whole thing just implodes, I'll laugh my ass off. I'll have so much fun with that. But if it goes to September and October and Trump's able to get even just a couple billion out of it, I'm going to be fucking pissed. Because this is another one of those games that really rich people make. I mean, we're talking about people that have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. They're gaming all the systems. They always do. And they make new rules to close these gaming opportunities. But these SPACs, this special purchase acquisition companies, I don't think they should exist. I think it's a problem. It allows a completely worthless company to be bought by a company that's publicly traded, and voila, without any regulatory oversight, your worthless company is now traded on the stock market. People think that it has a value.
All right.
Anyway, more than you probably wanted.
We have a load of callers, and I've got announcements to get to, and it looks like we're going to actually get calls about, gods and theism and stuff like that, which I'm very excited for, because theists are always going to have priority when calling in here. If you're one of the crypto NFT whiny little Phil doesn't know what he's talking about people, you are definitely going to be at the bottom of the queue. Just letting you know ahead of time, you probably will sit on hold for a long time. And we're not running very, very late today because I have prep work to do for a Reptile convention. So let me get the announcements out of the way. The first one is that there will be a big announcement later this week that Jimmy will be making, because what we're doing is we're shoring up our Patreon to help cover the problems that we're having with the platform on which this program airs, deciding almost immediately after every program that the monetization needs to be removed temporarily. Yeah. I'm trying to couch my language so that they don't, automatically flag it. Anyway, there's a big announcement later this week, and Patreon is still the best way to support the channel while we're dealing with whatever crap we're dealing with through the algorithms here. But this is a call-in network primarily. And so the Transatlantic Call-In Show will be tomorrow with Dr. Ben and Katy. If you have questions about trans rights, trans issues, and you want to be able to talk to experts, actual trans folks who will tell you about their lived experience, and will cite the science, and an actual medical doctor here to answer those questions, that can all happen tomorrow on Transatlantic Call-In Show. I believe it's still starting at the normal 2 o'clock time. Am I correct?
Yes.
Sweet. 2 p.m. Central. So 4.5 hours earlier than right now on your clock. Tomorrow is when it's going to start. On the Sunday show, because I'll be busy with reptiles, Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels will be here along with Aron Ra. And the Sunday show after dark, the evening kind of follow-up, is going to be Forrest and John Gleason. And that'll start, I think, at 7 p.m. And the regular Sunday show is at 2 p.m. Next Monday, Skeptalk will be Shannon Q and Aaron Adair. And Tuesday, which is turning out to be one of my favorite days of show, Chewed Gum airs with Eve and Alyssa. Let me tell you, we were driving back from doing some reptile related stuff and rodent related stuff, and so we had like a 30-minute drive back. And whereas normally I'd just put on music and jam, Arden was like, "Ooh, Chewed Gum's on," and I was like, "Cool," and we put it on, and I'm sitting here listening. And for those of you who know me, I'm sitting here talking to the radio in the car, saying, no, there's this. And then Eve would say it only better and calmer. And I mean, Eve was just on fire yesterday with, but what about, yes, and this, and this, and this, and here's a problem. And yes, you didn't, but you still haven't answered this question. Holding people to the fire to answer the question they're asked, because that's how you actually get them to stop preaching and start having a conversation, figure out what's going on. Tuesday, Chewed Gum, which somebody just called Tuesday. We need a t-shirt with Tuesday on it. It's my first time seeing it, but I'm sure somebody else has done it several times. Lots and lots of good stuff. Did I miss any of the announcements, producer extraordinaire?
You did not. You're wonderful.
Oh, you're the wonderful one, but thank you. All right, so we've got loads and loads of calls I want to get to right away. So we have Art calling from Pennsylvania, prone to him. Art's a theist who wants to talk about a non-personal God that's the foundation of everything. So welcome, Art. You're on with Phil and Matt.
Well, hello, Phil and Matt. Yeah. Matt, in previous clips, you've seemed to, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you seem to insist that the only valid definition of God was a thinking agent with purpose and intent.
Nope.
And no?
No, I've always said that I'm going to work with whatever. I don't have a definition of God. It's up to the person who believes there is a God to tell me what their definition of God is, and then I can evaluate it. I don't get to decide what is. I don't know if you use the word valid or whatever. Now there are certain definitions of gods that I don't care about. A deistic God is an absolutely useless proposition, because that's a God that by definition does not interact with reality in any detectable way. So people who believe in a deistic God are claiming to have detected the undetectable. And I don't care to waste any time having conversations about gods that aren't, like, there's billions of people on the planet and they believe in particular God notions, and they are voting on behalf of those, and they're impacting the lives of everybody else. I don't care about minor little esoteric God things. So it may be that the God you're getting ready to propose isn't one that I care to discuss.
All right. Well, the God I would like to discuss is the idea of God as ultimate ground of existence, as subsistent being itself. That's the God of Hindu Vedanta. It's arguably the God of Taoism. It's the God that many Christian and Islamic mystics seem to experience.
I don't know what you mean by ultimate ground of existence. How do we know that there is or must be an ultimate ground, and what its qualities are?
Okay. Ultimate ground of existence, very briefly, the table's existence is grounded in the wood. if the wood can exist without the table existing, but not vice versa. The wood's existence is grounded in the atoms. You keep going, quarks. We're talking about that there is an ultimate ground. There is the one that is the ground of everything that exists.
I still,
you haven't elaborate.
You haven't given me anything that I can actually latch on to, because first of all, a table isn't grounded in the wood if it's made of metal, is it?
Well, okay, then it's metal. No, that's true.
Yeah. Well, why would we ever say that the table is grounded in the material elements that it is comprised of?
Well, why
is that what grounding? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just saying, why is it that because something has certain material structure, that material is the grounding, and then you're looking for a grounding for that and a grounding for that and a grounding for that, right?
Why don't you just say it's made of wood or made of metal? Why use grounding?
Well, because I'm trying to explain the idea of ultimate ground of existence. That's why I use grounding. And grounding indicates an ontological dependency. In other words, the wave depends on the ocean, but the ocean doesn't depend on the wave. So the ocean is the ground of the wave. It's in other words, the thing doesn't exist.
The wave can't just depend on the ocean, because the wave also depends on the energy transmitted through it.
Yes.
Via wind.
So which one is the ultimate ground, the water or the energy?
I would say the water.
Why?
I'd say the energy.
There's no wave without energy, right?
That's true. Because a wave is something the ocean does, but it's the ocean that's doing it.
No, the ocean isn't doing
it. No.
The ocean isn't an agent or actor.
Well,
this is something that just happens to the ocean, right? Energy passes through it.
Yes.
Okay. So if a wave is contingent on both the water and the energy, how could you ever tell which, if either of them, is the grounding of a wave, or that a wave has a grounding?
Why use the word grounding at all? I'm not even sure I understand what the word means.
We're indicating ontological dependence. And if you just think of matter, we have levels of matter. We have wood, we have molecules, we have atoms, we have protons, we have quarks.
Those aren't levels of matter.
Yeah, what
that is just matter, and matter is arranged in different patterns.
Well, there's the atomic level of matter. There's the subatomic level of matter.
That's just matter. You're just deciding, I'm only going to talk about matter in this context. There's not levels of matter. Why do I need levels of matter?
It's like, when does a bunch of grapes stop being a bunch of grapes? You may take one away. When does a water molecule become water? There's not a level. It's just quantity. But go on.
I don't know what to say. I mean, on the atomic level, protons, neutrons, electrons, or let's say atoms exist on the atomic level. Now, on the level that I live at, I don't sense atoms directly, but there's a level where they are sensed.
Don't they still exist at the level?
Oh yeah, they exist.
Yeah. So why is it that you just did a sentence and you caught yourself being fallacious, because you said at the level of atoms, there are atoms, but at this other level, and then you had to stop and change words in order to phrase it differently, because you realized that atoms still exist. Because it's not levels of matter. You are looking at things at different levels, as if you were in a plane at 35,000 feet, standing on the top of the roof at 40 feet and standing at ground level. But that doesn't change what is. That has nothing to do with the ontology. That only has to do with how you're going to perceive it, where you're going to draw lines, and how you define it. You've done nothing at all to establish that grounding either is a real thing or what it is. All you're saying is that reality can be viewed from different perspectives, and I agree.
I would use scale instead of level.
Okay, scale. But
Cool. What scale is God, and how do you know?
What? Okay. All right. Well, now, if you reject the idea of ultimate ground of existence, I don't know how to proceed. Are you like accepting it for the sake of argument, or are you rejecting it? Because if you reject it,
I have no reason. Else. I have no reason to accept an ultimate ground of existence.
I'm not sure I even understand what it means, so I can't accept it. What?
Well,
you're just throwing words together.
Okay, let me speak to that in terms of an analogy, if I may. Okay, I have a dream. In my dream, there's people, there's places, there's a car. That car in my dream is not made out of metal and glass. It's made out of my thought.
It's not made out of anything.
In my dream. Well, it exists in my dream. It must be made out of something.
It doesn't exist in your dream. It is just a concept. It doesn't exist. It's not made of anything. You are just merely conceptualizing.
I conceptualize when I think. If I'm dreaming and I don't know I'm dreaming and I see a car and I see some friend I haven't seen since college, I am experiencing them, but I'm not experiencing them.
No, you're not.
Like
no, you're not. Right, you're not experiencing. You're not experiencing them. You are engaged with a concept of them. This is the same misrepresentation as the people who are stalkers who think that they have a relationship with somebody. What happens in your dreams is your concept. It has nothing to do with the other person, because your dream about that other person is the same whether that person exists or whether you just made them up.
I feel I'm being okay. Well, let me try one more time. I don't.
You feel you're being what? You feel you're being what?
What? Okay. Can you dream about a car?
You feel you're being what?
I feel like I'm being misunderstood, and I didn't think what I was saying was that hard to understand, so I'm kind of puzzled.
It's not difficult to understand. We understand it completely enough to point out the flaws in it, and you're just not able to deal with the flaws in it.
Well, if you dream of a car or a tree or whatever,
okay,
what is the basis of that? The basis is your thought, your mind. You're creating that tree or car or whatever.
It's not
in your
mind. It's not the basis of it. It is that. It is a thought. The thought isn't the basis of it. It's merely a thought.
Okay.
That's like saying that the basis of light is light. The basis of hunger is hunger. The basis of sorrow is sorrow. The basis of my thought of a tree is the thought of a tree. It is that. It's not a basis thing.
And I think you're adding words that don't add to the conversation, which is causing us problems, because when you are trying to describe what is the basis of something, that's I don't ever talk about words that way when I'm out with the public. If I want to buy a car, I'm going to go to the dealership and go, what is the basis of the price of this car?
Right.
What is the basis of gasoline?
I find it hard to believe this is being misunderstood. Let me just try one more time.
It's not being misunderstood, Art. You're being obtuse. We are asking legitimate questions and launching objections to the way you're trying to spin things in order to claim that there's a universal grounding for everything. That's not a problem on our end. You need better answers. This ain't my first rodeo.
All right. I'll try one more time if I may, then I'll give up if you guys say I'm done.
Cool.
Okay. Of course, you can say I'm done anytime. I know it's your show, but that's what I propose to do. Okay.
That's the most
what is it you're going to try again? What is it you're trying to demonstrate?
If I go to my driveway, there's a car. The basis of that car, or the ground of existence of that car, is the metal and the glass and the plastic, whatever, the rubber on the tires. That's what makes the car.
No.
If I dream about that car at night, what makes the car in my mind is my thought. There's no metal and glass and whatever in my mind. The basis of the car in my mind is my own thought. I was using that as an analogy to say that.
Do you think for a second, Art, that we didn't understand it was a fucking analogy?
Well, then you. Okay, so it's an analogy. Do you understand the analogy? I was trying to answer.
Yeah, do you understand analogy? Do you understand that an analogy isn't a demonstration of reality? that all analogies are flawed, and that when you go to talk about the grounding of the car in your driveway, you're still making an unfounded assertion that there is a grounding of the car, and you are making an additional assertion of what that grounding is. Let's just both agree that the car in your driveway is made up of material, and the car in your brain is merely a thought. What's the point?
I was trying to address Phil's when he said that he didn't quite understand the idea of ground of existence. In a dream,
we still don't. I just asked you what.
Yeah, the analogy didn't help answer that question at all.
Telling me what the car is made of does not show that the car has a ground or that you have properly identified it. Talking about the car in your dream seems to be completely fucking irrelevant to anything in reality, because the car in your dream is merely a concept. So are you going to show that there's a grounding, and how you know what the grounding is?
Okay. Let's try to maybe reset this. I'm coming in with the idea that God is ultimate grounding of existence, and I was just trying to explain the concept. If the concept isn't acceptable,
Art,
we have nowhere to go.
You don't get to come in with the idea that God is the grounding for existence and then object when we say, what do you mean by the grounding for existence? How do you know that there is a grounding? And how do you know that you can identify that grounding as God? If all you want to do is come in and make unfounded assertions, you have called the wrong show for sure.
Right. You just mentioned three things. I was just trying to get the concept across. Now, why we would call this
I don't
God,
need you to get a concept across. I need you to make your fucking point and prove it. Do you think that I'm not aware that you can conceptualize a God and that you can make assertions about grounding? How do you know that reality has a grounding? How do you know what that grounding is? And why would you call that grounding God? You need to do all three of those. You haven't even gotten to the first one. Are you going to do that or not?
Tell me exactly what you'd like me to do now. Just the first.
How do you know that reality has a grounding?
Okay. I am not claiming to have proof. I am talking about a concept of God.
Goodbye.
Okay. All right. So, okay.
Goodbye.
Oh, boy. Okay, goodbye. Okay, see you. So long.
I don't need proof. I would have liked even evidence other than just... It's one of those things, and I listened to several shows before we had this meeting together, and the callers often have this, I don't know, this thing where they make statements, they make claims, and it's like you have to accept that claim to even go to the next step in their logic, but the claim that they've made is baseless. You know, when someone says that there was a time before the universe, how do you know that? And they can't answer it because they don't know that, but yet they claim it. How do you have that knowledge? How do you back it up? How do you support it? But
yeah, it's for those who may not have followed all of it. When somebody says, I'm not claiming to have proof, I'm not looking at it in terms of proof or the mathematical thing. We're having a conversation here, and the caller is calling in to say reality must have some grounding, some foundation. That grounding should have these qualities, and I'm going to identify that as God. Those are the three aspects of this call. I have repeatedly asked Art if and when he's going to demonstrate what he means by reality having a grounding and how he knows it has a grounding. And after dancing around for all that time, Art then says, well, I didn't say I had proof. I seem to be frozen in vMix. I don't know if I'm frozen on YouTube.
Well, and further, he's not here to prove it.
Refresh.
So if he's not here to prove it, what's he here for? Just to make the claim? Well, he made the claim. Great. He made the claim. We moved on. We asked for evidence. He didn't have any. Yes, Matt, you're frozen, but can you talk? Oh, I'm going to hijack the whole show now. Well, Matt went away. There you are. You're moving again.
Okay. Yeah,
I
the
can hear
whole
you
time
too.
Phil was actually moving in vmix, but I was frozen with my finger in the air. So
Yeah, you didn't have a proper grounding.
yeah, it was on my end. So anyway, just to kind of drive this point home, I'm not looking for, I don't care about proof or the language. I'm fine with the colloquialism. I think in Art's case, he wasn't saying he had proof or didn't have proof in a mathematical sense. What he was saying is, I'm not going to defend the notion that reality has a grounding, how I know it or how I know what it is. And without that defense, he wanted us to say, of course, reality needs a grounding. That's just obvious. And then he was going to say, yes. And unlike all of these religionists who think that God is a personal being, I just think that God is that grounding. That is one of the most exhausting and useless, time-wasting propositions ever. And Art couldn't even get to how and why he thought that reality had a grounding. So maybe we'll do better with some other callers.
Yeah.
So Marie in Norway is a theist, pronouns are she, her, with thoughts about a soul. So welcome, Marie. You're on with Phil and Matt.
Oh, yes. It's my cohabitant that listens to your programs. So I have listened to them sometimes, and I thought maybe I should, what can I say? I don't know, okay. Am I just going to begin to talk, or?
Yeah, we just need to know what it was you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Take your time. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah. It was like this. I am not a Christian. I am not religious. I am not, what can I say? I've never been thinking so much about these questions, you know? I never take a standpoint to this. So I was just living and not thinking about the one direction or the other. I just living, not thinking. And then I had,
that sounds great.
I was, yes. And then I am not there. And then I had a very strange, some years ago, I was renting out my house, and I experienced something in the house, and some guests experienced something in this house that we cannot explain. And it's like I was preparing for doing some work. I'm fixing houses, painting, carpeting, everything, you know, like this. And I was down in the basement, not under the ground, but a little bit under the first floor. And I was just standing there preparing for some work I should do later, taking, what can I say, paint is to look what kind of color you want, and like this. And then I heard a voice out from nowhere, and well, I what should I do and what should I think? It's no neighbors there. It's a very quiet place. It's not the road. It's a pattern to the house and everything like this. And I didn't think anything more about it. It went out of my head when I was out of this room. And some years later, suddenly all this came back to me, and I remember these two women renting one summer weeks in my house, about in the same period. They told me they have heard also something. And after this, I have thought about this very often. And I not find any explanation. So I have written it down. It's going to be a little book. And really, I can say it's the most, what can I say? You know, you never think you will experience something like this in your life. And I thought after this, have you got a soul after this? Because really, we were three people. They heard this step. I heard step one time and the voice another time. Not so long time, but I heard it. And so, we were three people and experience, yeah. Huh?
You're saying you heard step? So you heard like footsteps?
Yeah, and the thing
Okay.
is that this woman, I forgot it all because I'm a worker, you know. I was fixing house.
I don't understand that.
And,
So I don't understand how someone can be working, hear voices, and then forget about it for years.
no, I don't understand myself because you see, it's like this. I was down there in the basement and it was this voice from a man for 10, 15 seconds. But I had a lot to do.
What did the voice say?
No, when it came back to me in 2014, I remember very clearly it came back to me this voice.
No.
Step.
So you heard a voice and you forgot about it for years, and then in 2014 you remember exactly what it says. Are you kidding?
No. As I said, it was like the voice was not from inside and not from outside. It was very clear, but I couldn't recognize a word. When I was there, I couldn't say what it says, and afterwards I couldn't say. But it was very clear, and it was from an old man, about past 70, not very old, about 70 years old, I thought. And I talked to the neighborhood.
No. Hang on.
Yeah.
You heard a voice that you could identify as a 70-year-old man or older. It was very clear, but you don't know what it said.
No. Impossible.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a little bit in
how did you
when
know?
it came.
How did you know it's a 70-year-old man if you don't know what it said?
No, but you hear from the voice of a person about how old this is, okay? Let's say he was 65, 70, 75. Not very old, but absolutely more than... I have my cohabitant, he's 67. You know, you compare to what...
I can sound like I'm a little baby. I can sound like I'm a teenager. I can sound like a middle-aged adult. I can sound like I'm 90.
No, but it's not like that.
All of those are things that I can do. So all you can say is you heard something, and to you it sounded like an older gentleman.
No, it was a very clear voice, and I could say he was not 20.
If it was very clear, how is it possible that you don't know what it said?
You know what? I thought, either we have a soul or it was another dimension.
That is not even in the ballpark of an answer to the question that I just asked you. I didn't ask you whether or not we have a soul or what you thought about. I said, how can you say that the voice was very clear, but you do not know what the voice said?
You know, now you have to listen very carefully here. If it was another dimension, then it has to
Marie,
be some...
I didn't ask about another dimension. I didn't ask at all for you to speculate. I'm asking a very specific question. How can you say that the voice was very clear and yet you do not know what it said? How is that possible?
Was it a different language? Different language, maybe.
No, it was Norwegian. But you know, how can I answer this question? Because if it was a soul or another dimension, how can I answer this question?
No, you don't get to go on to speculate it's a soul. I think I now have the answer to my question because I've asked you the same question 3 fucking times and you have come nowhere near answering it. So I'm speaking very clearly and you clearly have no comprehension of what it is that I'm saying. So now I understand how you could hear a voice clearly and have no clue what it said because that's literally what you're doing right here with me.
Okay, so all I listen to the other man calling.
No, we're done.
It's not so interesting
we're done,
for me
Marie.
because...
No, we're done, Marie.
Okay,
you don't get to just say okay and then keep on talking. Goodbye.
You know what, Matt? I have experienced a few times where my wife calls me, and I actually will turn towards the sound, and I will say, "What do you need, honey?" And then I'm like, "Oh, she's not even in the house." Right? It happened.
Yeah.
It happened in here. Now, could there be something that triggered that as an external source? something that you can do. And some people are more susceptible to this than others. If you take a fan and a second fan and you run them at the same time, sometimes the random variabilityness of the two fans interacting with each other in the air, you can hear music, and it's not like they're channeling a radio station. It's all fiction that your mind is trying to interpret those sounds and link it up to something that's familiar to you. And it could have easily been that. It could have been 100 other things. But just because something happens and you don't know what it was or what exactly was going on, doesn't mean you just make up stuff. If you're going to insist it's another dimension, you're going to have to prove there's another dimension other than the 3 plus time. But okay, cool.
It's really frustrating because if we were to allow Marie to continue, the bulk of the story is she was doing some work and heard a voice clearly that sounded like an older gentleman,
yeah.
But she doesn't know what it said. And then she forgot about it until years later when somebody else who had stayed at her house mentioned hearing something. And then she remembered, if I'm in my house and I hear a voice, I don't know that I'm actually going to forget that, but I'm certainly not going to describe it as a clear voice if I don't know what the hell it said. I would have described it as a vague voice or something that sounded voice-like. But her speculation then is, what if we have souls? Well, why wasn't the speculation, what if you're hearing shit? What if your brain's making stuff up? What if on occasion people tell stories?
Yeah.
What if?
And I don't doubt that you heard something, but why not just stop with, I don't know what I heard?
Yeah. What if you and your house guest were hearing a neighbor's TV cranked up, muffled through the wall, echoing through a vent in the house?
Yeah.
What if? I have no interests in the what ifs. I care about what is.
Were you there?
What we can demonstrate.
You don't know. You weren't there.
I know. It's just not even fair. All right. From New Jersey, we have, is it Eason?
Yeah, that's the sort of adequate pronunciation of the name. That's correct.
Is there a better pronunciation? Because I strive to be slightly more than adequate when I can.
Yeah, you can just say Eason.
Eason, okay. How you doing, Eason? You're on with Phil and Matt.
And what I'm sort of interested in doing in our conversation, so to speak, is to sort of provide an argument in favor of the theist worldview, right? Such that I can establish that the atheist worldview is going to be sort of like a class act view, right? And we can get into that when you want to. And I actually think that, there's evidence for theism.
The atheist worldview is
sort of like a class act view. Like, and by that, I just mean one where there's sort of strong evidence counting against it, right?
Are you saying class act view?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, plus I reject the atheist worldview.
To say that the view is a class act view is just to say that there's strong evidence against it, right? That's just how it's employed in the literature.
I don't know what literature?
What literature are you? Okay. Whatever. Present your case for the theist worldview.
Yeah, so premise one is going to be that we're in an S-type world is going to be a priori improbable, right? And to establish that premise, I'm going to appeal to Paul Draper's works, right?
Eason, stop for a second. First of all, I need you to move the mic away from your face or whatever, because you sound like this in there, and it's scratchy. And I don't think it's your voice. I think it's just the microphone and everything else. So I'm having difficulty understanding what you're saying, which is why I'm going to have to ask for additional clarification. So
and try to slow down.
Can you hang on? Can you just state premise one clearly?
Yeah, of course. So premise one is saying that we're in an S-type world is going to be a priori improbable, right?
That's not a
I
premise.
wonder why people do that. Yeah, why people say right at the end of the sentence.
You deny that that's a premise?
Yes,
I'm
because
sorry, it's just hilarious to me how logically bankrupt the atheists are. That's obviously a premise, right? It's a proposition that's going to be contained in an argument where it's going to precede the conclusion.
Here's the problem here, Eason, Captain Bankrupt, is that if we're going to construct a syllogism where premises lead to a conclusion, there's a major term, a minor term, and a connecting term. What's the major term in your first premise, smartass?
Wait, that's not true. You can actually have premises. Just take
I'm going to mute you. I'm going to ask the question again. There's a major term. There's a minor term. One's at premise one, one's at premise two. There's a connecting term. In your premise that we are in an S-type world that is a priori improbable, what is the major term?
That's a loaded question. I don't accept that every syllogism.
I don't care what you accept. If you're going to call into my show and pretend that we're logically bankrupt, and I ask you, here, I'm going to mute you again. Nobody's going to hear a word you say, so you can babble to yourself. You're not going to call in and pretend that I'm the one that's logically bankrupt when I'm asking you to actually defend the components of your premise. Can you actually identify the components of your premise? Or are you just one of the smug pricks who'd like to pretend that the rest of us are logically bankrupt? Which is it?
I think you're
by the way. As long as you don't run away, Matthew. As long as you...
Oh, don't run away? Bye, bitch. Thanks for wasting the time. Yeah. I knew this was going to be the don't run away. Oh, the atheist bankruptcy. Here's the thing.
Wow.
In propositional logic, syllogistic forms have structure, where there are premises, two of them that lead to a conclusion. Yes, you can expand on that. But when you say, my premise is we're in an S-type world that is a priori impossible or improbable, what is the major component? Is it that we're in an S-type world or that it's a priori impossible? One of those is a major premise. One of them is the connecting term. Because premise two, which we didn't get to because you're a smug prick, would have needed to then include either one of those two and the minor. And then
what does it even mean
the terms to get to, well, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's a class act thing. You know who isn't a class act? That caller.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm sorry, Phil, that we didn't get. Maybe we'll get more theistic callers. Because
I'm fascinated when people say the atheist worldview or atheism does this or atheism does that. I don't even like the word atheism. I'm comfortable with atheist. I'm not convinced in one or more gods, but there's not a set of beliefs that go with that outside of that one thing.
Yeah, it's wild because his purpose was to present a case that defended the theistic worldview while showing that the atheist worldview was class act, class A. I don't even completely sure what he's saying, and I don't necessarily, but it's in the literature. Here's the thing. This is really easy to all the theists that are out there. If you're one of those fans of Jay or Andrew or whatever, and you've decided to troll, I'm going to catch you every time. You're going to make no progress, and you're going to get exactly what it is that you're looking for, which is I'm going to hang up on you. And you're going to still look foolish because on Sunday, I had a 30-minute conversation that went exceptionally well. And the week before that, I had a debate that went exceptionally well. I'm not the one who's deficient here. If you're going to call into the program, which we hope you do, the point is for you to defend your theistic worldview. You can do that in a variety of different ways. You can do what a previous caller was trying to do and make an argument for grounding, provided you can actually explain the concept. No one's saying you have to use a syllogism and you have to present your argument as premise one, premise two, conclusion. But if you do, and if you start with the first premise is this, you don't get to then object when we're saying, I need you to be more clear in this, just like you don't get to object when you say, ooh, there must be a grounding. The weird
And
thing
I know
is, for the theists who are out there who think there's a God, and a God that they pray to and communicate to, a God who's giving them some sort of guidance, why does God keep guiding representatives to call in only to get demolished and let go? Why can't God tell you exactly what to say that exposes how wrong we are, how illogical we are, how irrational we are? That never happens.
Yeah.
Ever. And it doesn't matter whether I'm the one that's in control of the hold button or if we're in a debate in a church. It doesn't happen. Why is God punking you?
It's a fascinating thing because I know you are much more into arguments and know much more about them than I do. And I have been on record as saying that philosophical arguments are just verbal masturbation. And I'm looking for evidence. Even if someone makes a coherent and sound argument, it's just an argument. We still need the evidence. So why doesn't someone just call? Somebody's listening. Somebody's watching. You have evidence? Call us. Tell us what the evidence is. If you still want to make arguments, fine, whatever. Matt will take care of that. But I would love some actual, genuine evidence. Empirical evidence would be really nice. If God is everywhere and can do anything, have him change my shirt from orange to green or something. I don't know.
Have him regrow a limb.
Yeah.
But, all right.
I used to say when I lived in Arkansas, that people would tell me about the power of prayer. And I said, and when I see a group of people around a car with a flat tire in a prayer circle, and that tire reinflates by itself, then come back and talk to me about cancer and all these illnesses that God can heal because he can't inflate a fucking tire. So
we haven't proved anything, but at least it'd be a start. It's like,
it'd be nice.
I recently had a conversation with someone. I'm not going to go into too much of the details, but they were talking about, they were trying to construct an epistemology to get all the facets in order to be able to determine when a Christophany directed healing of someone occurred. Essentially, if someone has a medically verifiable illness and people gather around and pray, it needed to be a long-term illness or an amputation or something along those lines. Then they needed to pray, and it needed to be a specific type of prayer where they're praying like in the name of Jesus, and then a confirmed healing. Would that be a sufficient epistemological grounding to say, we have good reason to believe that Jesus exists and heals people? And I was pointing out the problem, just the beginning problems, exhausted in the middle of the night after long conversations with this, which is, how do you know other people aren't praying for them in the name of Satan or the name of Baal or the name of whatever? You've established no control group. So that's the first problem, because you only have the positive connection of we prayed in the name of Jesus and this happened. Then your epistemology doesn't take into account how many other people are praying in other ways. It doesn't take into account how many other times they were prayed for in Jesus' name that this didn't happen. And it doesn't take into account how many other people with the identical condition were also prayed for in the name of Jesus, perhaps even by the same individuals. And I was like, why are you guys trying to sit here and come up with an epistemology for something that the Templeton Foundation has already done a test on? The Templeton Foundation did a much more reliable, a much more robust testing of intercessory prayer. And what they found is that intercessory prayer does not work. It works at the same rate as a coin toss or chance, unless the person being prayed for also knows that they're being prayed for, and then it works at a worse rate. It doesn't even work at the rate of chance, and they're suspecting that maybe this is performance anxiety, where, all the burden's on me to prove that God's real. So if you're trying to come up with an epistemology to demonstrate that prayer works, the first thing that needs to happen is you need to demonstrate that there's actually been any kind of healing. You don't get to say, and I'm getting ready to release a video probably late next week about the one and only healing that was proposed by Than in our recent debate, which he wanted to tie back to being a confirmation or adding a data point that lended more credibility to Jesus rising from the dead. This healing is a bunch of nonsense. And I'll go into it more later, but it's like, we really want to show that God can heal people. Cool. Start by showing anybody who's actually been through a healing. Once you demonstrate there's a healing, then you can start saying, okay, what are the potential candidate explanations for this healing? And you know what? God isn't even a candidate explanation until you demonstrate that it should be considered a candidate explanation. And you have to do that
like
using
a sample
proper.
Size.
Yeah.
Sample size greater than 1 would be really nice. Controls, double blind, repeatable, just all that stuff. It's never there. It's not scientifically sound.
Yep. Atheist caller Michael, pronouns are he, him, from, is it Michigan? Welcome to the show. You're on with Matt and Phil.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Phil. How you guys doing?
Pretty well.
Good.
Good. So I guess I'm a pretty hard atheist, and I guess my basic question is, I know that philosophically the premise is unfalsifiable, but there's a lot of things that we say are unfalsifiable that we also know, like like the premise that we live in a simulation. We can't prove that we don't live in a simulation, but we just go with the assumption that we are in a reality. That's the only thing we can do. I'm a little nervous here. So I guess I'm just wondering, in the same way, why we can't say that, to the best of our knowledge, we know that there is no God.
We can.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
There you go.
I guess that's
Preach it, Michael.
I have a
the issue there is that the phrase "to the best of our knowledge" is doing a fuck ton of heavy lifting there, and the people that we are in conflict with are absolutely unlikely to accept that as any sort of reasonable response to what they're saying. And I think they're right to do that. When you say, to the best of our knowledge, there is no God. Okay. I wouldn't even say we know there is no God. I would just say, to the best of my knowledge, I can have a positive belief that there is no God, because the universe doesn't operate in a way that is consistent with any of my understandings of any of the proposed gods. That doesn't in any way confirm that they don't exist. And it may be that the proposition's unfalsifiable, but as a default position, or not a default position, but as a conclusion, I could say that based on everything I know, I can be really confident that there aren't any gods, at least the proposed gods don't exist, and everything else. The issue is, so what? At no point in there have I demonstrated that there's not a God. And I've adopted a burden of proof in the eyes of the people who believe that allows them to avoid meeting their burden of proof. If people are running around saying a God exists, they've adopted a burden of proof. Why on earth would I ever relieve them of the responsibility of proving what they claim is true by adopting a burden of proof that I can't meet?
Right. I completely understand that. Yeah, and I agree with you. It's a burden of proof that we can't prove that no God at all exists. But I have a son, so of course, and he's young now, so the questions haven't started yet, but they're coming soon. So in the same way that he might watch, say, like The Little Mermaid, and come to me and say, "Dad, do mermaids really exist?" I think I can just say no, even though, but then in the same way, you get frustrated, or we get frustrated with the theists who are like, well, God could exist outside of space and time. That feels like I could just say, well, mermaids could exist outside of space and time. There's no, I don't feel like the soft stance of, well, I can't prove that no gods exist is really like what I want to say. I want to be like, no, we have no, we have no reason to think that a God exists, and nobody has ever demonstrated that it exists. So just like we don't have any reason, just like we can say that mermaids don't exist, we can say God doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Michael, I can suggest, if you want some more stuff to help you with kids, I did a talk several years ago, and if you Google Phil Ferguson, and the title of the talk is Breaking the Cycle, and it's on the big tube channel. You can find it there, where I give a presentation of how to talk to your kids, how to talk to your kids' friends, how to talk to your friends' kids, nieces, nephews, grandkids, whatever, and strategies that you can help them learn about the world without having that direct confrontation, which might exist in other parts of your family. You might find that video useful, or maybe some other listener does.
Yeah, definitely. I just, as I'm, because they're going to run into people who are like, oh yeah, God definitely exists. And then Jessica and say, does God really exist? The philosophical side of me wants to be like, well, I can't prove, that God doesn't exist. So it's almost like leaving a door open, or like a possibility, feels like leaving a possibility open when I don't.
You're supposed to leave a possibility open. Otherwise, you are now closed, which means you're not willing to accept evidence against your position. So you now have a position that you can't defend, and you're closing yourself off to the proof that it could be wrong. That's the whole point. That's what skepticism is. What's wrong with saying I don't know?
Nothing. It just feels like a weaker. It feels like a weaker.
It is a weaker. It's supposed to be weaker.
Yeah. The other thing you could do with kids is say that, some people believe that, but some people believe this, and some people believe this, and some people believe this other thing. And I believe this. And so you can hand them a dozen choices, and that's cool. What you don't want to do is give them direction on. You want to teach them how to think, how to parse apart all those different possibilities, not what to think. So the thing, and that's why I think you really like that video. A lot of parents don't want to talk about their atheism. Well, I don't know what else to use in that context. Their lack of belief in a deity, and how to express that with their kids, or they'll say, I'll wait until my kids are older. And I had a friend of mine who did that. And when his kids are 15 and 16, he said, he set them down and he wanted to explain to them that the church that they've been going to 3 times a week for the last 15 years was bullshit. And so he starts to talk to him, and the daughter stands up and says, we were warned that you would try this someday, and we're not supposed to listen to you. And his daughter and his son got up and walked out of the room. And he called me in fucking tears. And he said, I just lost my kids. And I said, well, I don't want to be a total dick about this, but you just found out that you lost your kids. You lost them years and years ago because you let them be constantly filled with bullshit and lies. And then when you try to come up against that hard cold all at one time, it's just not going to work. But I got the vibe that your kids are younger. So a lot of things you can do is, watch movies or teach them about different world religions and mythologies. You can teach them about magic. Matt knows a lot about magic. When I taught my kids magic tricks, the idea that something that looked like magic, once they learned how the trick was done, and I had one moment where my daughter was like, it's a stupid trick. This is bullshit, right? It's not real magic. And I go, well, what do you think magic is? Finding different ways for them to explore and experience the world and to become educated. I think all of those things work, in my opinion, as an inoculation to religion, which is more important than a different indoctrination. I don't know if I'm making sense, Michael, but I hope that helps.
No, yeah, I agree. I did the same thing, went through my own deconstruction and, found the same ways. And, I plan on not just saying, yeah, no, gods don't exist. Like, yeah, people have different beliefs. We can look at, these different religions and how they've interacted, and we can look at the history of, we'll say Christianity, because that's what chances are most likely that's what he's going to run into. And go through that route and, see why I've come to my conclusions. Yeah, I guess it's just that.
You can go buy the Lego Bible, by the way. I highly recommend that. It's the entire Bible made out of Legos.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I guess I just, it feels like a cop out, when they're like, well, you can't prove that it doesn't exist outside of space and time, and it's like, well, we can't even say that it's outside of space and time is a thing. It's
Yeah.
So it's like, how can they make that assertion when I'm, I don't understand that I can't prove it, that they can't prove it, but there's a lot of people that act like they're, Gnostic theists, where people are like, oh, well, I know a God exists. And they're like, well, my dad is leaving open the possibility. So maybe if they know it, but my dad said he doesn't know, then maybe they're right, that kind of thing. So I guess I don't feel like they're gonna go down the same path.
When my kids were growing up, my wife was very religious and I wasn't, and so I understand your concern. You can still be pretty wide open to the discussions. And I think the exposure to different world religions, if they start having questions about religions, go to a Catholic church, then go to a Methodist church, then go to an Episcopalian church, go to a temple or a mosque, if they'll let you, go to a Mormon facility, and let them see that they all think radically different things. We talk about that America has something like 65-70% of all Americans are Christian. Well, when you talk to most of them, they think 90% of all the other Christians are wrong. So
right.
Christianity is this big umbrella that everyone thinks they're Christian. I mean, I've talked to people that say they're Christians and they believe in reincarnation. I've talked to people that are Christians, they don't believe Jesus really existed. And I was like, I don't know what to say to you, but they say they're Christian because it's okay to say that. That's the safe way to say it.
Yeah, it doesn't come with the derogatory atheist label,
Yeah.
or what people be derogatory thing. But it's I feel like we're moving.
You're on a good path, Mike.
More.
Keep it up.
So I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys talking to me, and enjoy everything you guys do with the line. I tune into all the shows, so you guys keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep listening.
Thanks.
There's something here. So it doesn't need to be a weak position ever. You don't have to know, or even be able to know, if the actual claim is true or not. Let's say, here's the claim: some God exists. I have no idea if that's true or not. I don't even know how I can explore it. But I can know, not necessarily instantly, it's not the default position, that if somebody says, hey, I'm in communication with God, there is a God, I'm communicating with God, they've now adopted a burden of proof. The default position with respect to their claim is to not believe it until such time as they meet the burden of proof for their claim.
Right, which they can never demonstrate.
Not believing it, that position of not believing it, is functionally identical to believing that it's false without having to believe that it's false. Because if you're going to say, am I going to act as if it's true, or act as if I believe it, or am I going to act as if I don't believe it? My default position is to not believe it until such time. It's fine to say, and if you can demonstrate that they're making claims that they cannot and have not met the burden of proof on, it's fine to say that's bullshit. That claim is dishonest. That claim is, if it's fallacious. That claim, you're claiming to have, demonstrated that which can't be demonstrated, or you've falsified what can't be falsified, or whatever the thing is. It doesn't have to be this, well, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not. No, my position is not maybe there's a God, maybe there's not. I have not even seen a demonstration that a God is possible, let alone probable or likely. And so if I had a kid and they were coming up saying, hey, is there a God? My answer is, I have no reason to believe that a God exists. It's not, maybe there is, maybe there's not. Some people believe, some people don't. I can be very straightforward in saying, I have seen no good reason to believe that a God exists. Have you? Have you seen good reason to believe that God exists? When you do, let me know, and I'd be happy to change my mind. But there have been billions of people over thousands and thousands of years who have advocated for a God position And yet we seem to be still no closer to demonstrating the truth of any of them than we were on the day they first proposed them. That's a rather curious state of affairs. And when you begin to investigate the claims that they're making, as we get better and better at being able to investigate and analyze claims, when we have photography and videography, when we have recording devices, when we have scientific machines and equipment with which to analyze things, as our ability to investigate gets better, our confirmation of these claims of miracles and things like that decreases. The prevalence of confirmed or proposed confirmed, because there have been no confirmed miracles, the presence of proposed confirmed miracles is inversely proportional to our ability to investigate them. That is not consistent with the claim being true, likely true, or probably true. I don't have to take a maybe there is, maybe there's not position. My position can be, I live my life as if there's no God, because there are thousands of proposed gods out there, and none of them have demonstrated that any of them are more likely or sufficiently more likely than any of the others for me to believe it. So I can run around saying, yep, still don't believe in a God, still don't believe in a God, actively not believing in God, completely disbelieve this God. That God there is almost certainly false. That one has been falsified by the fact that we know where lightning comes from now. You can go through the list. You don't have to do this. Some people believe, some people don't. We can't really tell. We'll just wait. You can have the more forthright position that you want and still not have to say, well, based on what we know, we'll just go with there are no gods. Because you're taking a reasonable position and a default position, and you're spinning it into a position where you are now making an assertion that carries a burden of proof, which shifts the burden of proof.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. I agree. Yeah. I guess that it just feels like I'm, I don't know. I don't want to leave a door open, for, somebody to come in and claim that they have knowledge that I know that they can't have, that they haven't demonstrated to have.
What you do is you leave the door open, but you put a screen door in front of it. That screen door is the filter of skepticism, so that when people show up at the door and they try to tell your kid, hey, I know that a God exists, your kid can be like, okay, cool. We've got these little holes in the screen. Can your God fit through these holes? I've bent the metaphor to pieces, but there's a filter with which this needs to come through. And so instead of just thinking you're leaving the door open for anybody to come walking in, what you're really doing is giving your kids the tools to detect when someone has actually made the case for something and when they haven't. And that those tools don't just apply to religion. When they start hearing the 2020 election was stolen, when they start hearing vaccines cause autism, or the vaccine doesn't work, or the vaccine for whatever illness, now I have to start watching my language so that we don't get flagged for stuff. Any number of things. When they start hearing the earth is flat, when they start hearing, dinosaurs were just bones planted by the devil to confuse us about evolution, they will have then the tools to assess those claims. But if instead, when it comes to a difficult question where you, by the way, like me, are in the minority with regard to what people generally believe about this issue, and if you just say, you know what, based on what we know, gods are all make-believe, you haven't done anything to actually prepare them for dealing with somebody who says, how do you know that? And that's the first question they should get. How do you know that? Because that's the first question they should be asking. When somebody tells them that there's a God, how do you know that?
Right. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, that makes sense. Just, it's not focused so much on proving that God is wrong, but just teaching them how they can be skeptical about the claims that are presented and don't believe anything until it's been demonstrated. So
perfection. Chef's kiss.
Love it.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Right. Yeah. Appreciate it. You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
That, because of the crazy schedule we're on this week, is actually going to be the final call of today's show. I've got just a few super chats to get through, but if you get your super chats in quickly, we will be happy to read them if you had questions for Phil or anything else. I got some of them that showed up just based on, or at least one of them showed up based on an email for that. Once again, I'm going to do the kind of quick announcements here. I got 2 calls from Arden, but I didn't see either of them until right now. So don't worry about it. We're going to keep on going because I got lots and lots of work to do. As a reminder for the shows that are here on the network, tomorrow's the Transatlantic Call-In Show. Dr. Ben and Katie will be on. Sunday show during the day is going to be Eric from Skeptical Scoundrels and Aron Ra. And then the encore show is going to be Forrest and John Gleason. Monday Skeptalk is going to be Shannon and Dr. Aron Adair. And Tuesday is Chewed Gum is going to be Eve and Alyssa. And I know I already said it earlier. I like the shows we do. I like the hosts on it. I genuinely haven't had more fun listening to a show than we had yesterday. Listen, like there was a caller that called in to yesterday's Chewed Gum named Matthew, and I was in the car. Arden can vouch for it. She's sitting over there probably just laughing her ass off at me while I'm driving, and I'm like, oh, I wish this fucker would call me tomorrow because... And then everything that spewed out of my mouth that I was going to wait and say to that caller the next day is something that Eve said almost 3 seconds later in a much better way than I was going to say it. It's good stuff. Let's get to some super chats now. Boop, boop, boom. 10 euros from your team. Thanks for answering my question, Matt. You're welcome. This one came in an email, and I'm not going to talk about the question specifically because we were kind of asked not to. There's a lot of things that I would update you guys on. I've gotten some actually email updates on a few callers that have called in with struggles and difficulties. I'm not going to be going through any of that today or giving out personal information. There's a few things where things are happening with people, fans of the show, callers, people who called in with problems, people who I know many of you are concerned about. We'll wait till we get more information and then do an update there. Or you may never get an update because a lot of this is personal information for people. You already sent in an email with a question about a particularly delicate moral issue that really probably isn't all that important. But it's the type of thing where when you start a discussion about morality with people with very differing views on foundations of morality, grounding for morality. There's a throwback for you, baby. When you get in that position, it's very easy to kind of rabbit trail and go down side things. Do you like, yes, but in this scenario with this thing and this and this and this and this, and would it still be immoral to take this action under this circumstance? You know, like, would it be okay for me to agree to be a slave if somebody had a gun to my child's head and I didn't really mean it, or, you know, and so, but they're interesting conversations. The problem is that some of those get into really difficult areas to have discussions. Like I very good friend of mine, who I still love dearly, even though we haven't spoken in a few years now. We got into an argument about how the world should look at and view pedophiles. And I'm not talking about the people who harm children, because we were both in agreement the whole time. If you harm children, that's something that needs to be addressed by prison, by mental health counseling reform, whatever the steps are. It's not something we just ignore. But someone who has that attraction but doesn't act on it, I want a society where that individual can get some help so that no children ever get harmed. That's it. I don't know how making them a villain before they've actually done anything is going to help them get help. But I understand people's reactions and just being like, oh, and you can't have conversations about that in public without somebody soundbiting or doing a spin, or, you know, I knew it. The whole left is all about, you know, grooming or whatever, the left and right. So it was a question that I answered pretty quickly, and it happened there. You can send in your questions as well. We cannot promise to get to all of them, but don't do this other thing that happened to me yesterday. Somebody who I'm not friends with on Facebook. I almost feel bad doing this, but not really. Somebody who I'm not friends with on Facebook, I only have one mutual friend, sent me a message request out of the blue and says, I have a question on how to answer a theist about something they sent me. Is there an email I can ask you? And I said, you can just send it here, but I can't guarantee that I'll have time to do it. And what they sent me was, I'm sure you've seen the one where Albert Einstein shows up the professor. I'll just copy and paste it here. And then they copy and pasted the same glurge that all of us have been reading for decades. That student's name was Albert Einstein. And when they got to the end of it, I just replied, are you kidding? And they're like, nope. And I really appreciate your time. No, you don't. No, you absolutely do not appreciate my fucking time at all. If you are going to, because they had to go to work, they didn't have time to try to look up an answer, and they weren't sure if Albert Einstein actually was the student in question. And at this point, I want to just gouge out my eyeballs because I can no longer pull out my hair. Because it doesn't matter whether Albert Einstein was that student or not. It's a shit story, but it doesn't matter whether it was Einstein or not. Something doesn't become right just because Einstein said it. If Einstein got on TV and told the world, we should all be convinced absolutely that there is a God and that God's name is Jesus, that wouldn't make it true. So this glurge about the student being Einstein, it's the whole thing of, evil is the absence of good, just like cold is the absence of heat, and blah, blah. It is, you could have Googled the answer to this. That's not respecting my time. But somebody else suggested something that I might take to heart, which is from now on, when somebody sends me something and says, hey, I want you to, can you look this over and give me an answer so that I can report back to the theist? Most of the time, it's them trying to get me to do their homework for them because they don't want to look stupid in front of a theist. So they go to somebody who does this all the time to give them the answer. Okay, cool. Give me $100 deposit. I will look at your email. If it's an absolute waste of my time that you could have Googled the answer to without any extra effort, I'm going to keep the whole deposit and you're not going to get an answer. Then I will return portions of your deposit as the question becomes more complicated, where I actually learn something and benefit from it in a way that can get me, let me help somebody else. The more of a waste of time it is.
That's a retainer.
Yes.
You have to have a retainer. Yes, and I think honestly, $1,000 would be more appropriate for your time.
All right,
$1,000, yeah, as a retainer.
I'm not going to turn down more money, but
anyway. Yeah. I think it's worth it.
I appreciate the contribution and the question. While I think the question would be a waste of anybody's time, it was fun to answer it. I mean, the world's falling apart. I'm not that worried about the subject of that one. This one's yours to read, sir, if you would.
$9.99 from Greg Markowski. Isn't that one of the monster things?
Yep. You and I literally sat next to Greg and ate with him at an event in St. Louis, maybe?
Could be. Great to see Phil on again. Is the line patron a good investment? Yes. Well, that was easy. And what price should I buy Donald J. Trump stock? At no price should you buy it. It's not even worth zero. So, yeah. I mean, go out and offer like $2 for it and see if someone takes your offer and then turn around and sell it for 30. But I think, like I said, it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to go crash to zero, or there's going to be really, really rich people that think they can buy off Donald Trump, and they're going to hold up the stock long enough for him to get out, and then it will go to zero.
Yep. Thanks, Greg. $20 from Chakuseki.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm going to butcher stuff like that. But Matt, given how easily people are convinced by charlatans like Joseph Smith, L. Ron Hubbard, and now Trump, I would not be surprised if we're still on a call-in show 50 years arguing with members of the Church of Blotus. Yeah. I have pretty good job security, or I have pretty good confidence that I will outlive the arguments. Or no, the arguments will outlive me. That's what I have confidence. You see, that's why I got good job security, because just go ask the theist. I'm an embarrassment logically and totally irrational, and I can't do anything but run away or hang up on people, despite the incredibly lengthy conversations and debates that have proven to the contrary.
It's funny because on my show, the Phil Ferguson show, by the way,
I
thought I would run out.
I didn't hear that.
The Phil Ferguson show. Wow. I thought I would run out of investment scams to explain away, but no, there's always more. There's a never-ending opportunity to be separated from your investments.
I won't say we're friends. I have a friendly acquaintance in Simon Dan. We've done a single episode of podcast together, but he spends most of his time dealing with flat earthers. And I remember years ago, I was like, wow, how long do you think you can do Tinfoil Tuesdays? And then I just watched yesterday's episode of Tinfoil Tuesday, where Dan, if you're not already subscribed, go subscribe to Simon Dan and check it out. But Dan had to tap out. There are, in much the same way that I walked away from a debate with a globe skeptic, there are some people who have ideas that are so disconnected from reality that you can spend 10 times the amount of time it takes them to say that just to start debunking and correcting stuff. And it was funny because I think Dan actually got some stuff wrong when he was talking about the 3 3 4 3 3 whatever it was, because it was 3 every time. It's just that the guy was wrong when he called it 4. It's a hop of 3. That's the only way to get all the way around 7 in the time. But those of you who've watched it know. But it's okay, because it was so confusing. The guy wasn't making any sense. And Dan eventually had to tap out, and he's like, we'll have to do the rest of this another time, which I laughed very hard at. Good job. $10 from Experiments in Prebiotic Chemistry. In the, quote, existence of God debate, end quote, the only thing that matters is whether mind-body dualism is true or false. Oh, that's not true. If dualism is false, then all major religions are false. Okay, but if dualism is true, that still doesn't answer the question of whether or not there's a God. So when you say the only thing that matters is mind-body dualism, I disagree. If in fact mind-body dualism turns out to be true, you still have the entire question of whether or not there's a God. But you are right that if mind-body dualism is false, well, no, you're not right that all the major religions are false. Any of the major religions that posit a soul with an afterlife are then false without mind-body dualism. But there are versions even of Judaism where, and there's annihilation theory within Christianity, that wouldn't necessarily be entirely inconsistent with some versions of mind-body dualism being false. But you're on the right track. I don't want to pick it apart too much today, but thank you so much for chiming in with that, because it is an important issue. And as I've said before, I think the concept of a soul is the most dead concept in all of theology. And I think mind-body dualism is a load of hooey. And that certainly eliminates the overwhelming majority of religious concepts that I'm aware of.
I'm going to read this next one because it's the same thing I've been saying. $20 from Dan Phillips. God. Dear Matt, whatever happened to the book you used to talk about, If I Were God? Is this still something we can look forward to? Matt, write a book. You know what? Hire somebody to write the book, and you just proof it and make corrections.
Nope. That will never
credit.
There will never be a book. There will never be a book that's my book that I didn't write, ever.
Well, you just need an assistant to help you put it together.
Yeah.
You can still write it.
And, you know, we've been
Dan's
over
right.
Yes.
You put this book out, you're going to sell 20 million copies, get $1 each, and bam.
All right. I'll bet you $10 million
Yeah.
that it doesn't sell 20 million copies.
Wow. I'm not feeling that strong about it.
See, me neither.
Wow.
I appreciate the interest, and it's something I'd still like to happen. I do the hang up on Wednesdays. I do the Sunday show on Sundays. Arden and I are running a reptile hobby / business where we're doing breeding and vending and selling and doing all this. And then in addition, I go travel around the world to do lectures and debates and magic shows. And, I do all this stuff, and I have no savings, no retirement, and have dealt with a number of health issues, including a triple bypass. And now I'm going to have to go have oral surgery. Writing a book that, if I'm lucky, might sell 10,000 copies isn't as high on the list as some other things, but it is still on the list. And I appreciate the interest, and I appreciate the prodding, even though I will always complain about the prodding. Did you want to prod more, or can I read the next one?
$10 from Charlie Carrot. What's your favorite restaurant that's not in your city?
I don't know the name of it. There's a restaurant in Alexandria. No, there's a restaurant in Antalya, Turkey. About its walking distance from the prison that's by the main port there, is the best meal I ever ate in my life.
I know. I particularly like food, Italian food. We went to a place called Bocco de Nicolino. It's like Nicolino's hole in the wall is kind of the English translation, near the Duomo in Firenze, Italia. Absolutely delicious food. So go check that out.
There's a couple restaurants. Couple restaurants pretty high on my list. Like there's Junior's in New York. I mean, the best or nearly the best cheesecake I've had. I'm way up there. There's a few others, but Austin has such good food that genuinely, no matter where else I have lived, and I've lived, I was born in Kansas City area, then moved to St. Louis, then ended up in Orlando, and then in Norfolk. And I've traveled the world. Genuinely, some of my favorite restaurants are here in Austin.
I had a big shock. We were in Moab, Utah, and they had an entire city block of food trucks, and there was a gelato food truck, and I was dubious. It was probably the single best gelato I've ever had in the United States of America. Was in a fucking food truck. And I was talking to the guy that worked in the food truck. I said, do you just work here, or is this your truck? He goes, this is my truck. And I said, how you doing it, man? How are you making gelato that's so good? And he says, I went over to Italy and got licensed and certified, and actually makes genuine Italian gelato, and serves it out of that food truck in Moab, Utah, of all places. Absolutely fantastic.
Awesome possum. $20 from Whiskey Spirit Guide. Getting this in last minute. Thanks for a great show, Matt. Your beard's looking amazing and shapely. Well, I do trim it up like right before we go live. Phil, can't wait to dive into your content. Jimmy, get well soon, and go Jimmy yourself. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Boom. And you can read this one from Monkey at Typewriter.
$10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Phil, I hear constantly how the left is unrealistic regarding economics. Any thoughts on why leftism is economically rational? Also, great to see you guys together again since some other show. Why leftism is economically rational? I don't know what they mean by leftism per se, but I will often advocate for higher taxes for people that have a lot of money. And every once in a while, I'll get emails from people that go, be careful, Phil, that might include you. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I think paying a little bit of higher taxes, because I've been able to live in a country that has a stable economy and roads and an educated populace so that we can invent things and run companies that makes lots of money. I am a benefactor, dare I say, standing on the shoulders of giants, people that have come before me that allowed me to do so well. I didn't do all this by myself. I didn't do all this in a vacuum. Sure, I worked fucking hard. And for probably 2 decades, I had 3 jobs, like a lot of people have, because I had bills to pay. I had kids to raise. But when you work really hard and you get a few breaks and you start to make real money, I think people should pay taxes. And there are a lot of people that try really, really fucking hard and work 2 or 3 jobs that just still can't financially get shit together enough to get out of the hole that they live in. And I said that in the very beginning. We have enough money in this country. We have enough wealth that no one should be living in a tent unless they really want to. And it better be out in the fucking mountainside, not in San Francisco. We play a little game in San Francisco. We walk block to block, and each block we try to determine what is the stronger odor, urine or marijuana.
Well, I know which one I'd prefer. But yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know on a definition of leftism and a definition of economically rational.
Yeah.
I just, somebody, when people are like, "Oh, be careful," and I know Phil just said this, and it's the same thing that I've thought for years, which is, "Oh, when you start going after the wealthy, one day you might be wealthy too." Cool. I don't think that's likely. I don't think I'm ever going to be a billionaire, but like I bought tickets for the Powerball when it was over $1 billion last week. And if I'd have won $1 billion, I still wouldn't have been a billionaire.
You would have called Phil.
Yes, Phil would have been literally the first person other than Arden that I would have called. And by the time I paid the taxes and got myself out of debt and everything else, I might only have $300 or $400 million. Who knows? How am I ever going to live? What's that?
You would have enough to pay Trump's bail.
Yeah. And that's not what I would do with money. But once I got us set up with the Epic Loot set up with the breeding business I wanted, and the line set up with the studio and everything else I wanted, I'm pretty sure I could do all that, make sure all of my family is well invested and taken care of, have enough money put away where I never have to work and can just live off the interest forever. And I could probably still give away a couple $100 million on top of all of that. And that's just giving it away. That's not even figuring out where the best investment is to get it, to help the most people. That would just be like, let me just run around and hand out money to people.
Matt, I almost forgot one of the things I absolutely wanted to talk about on the show, if you will allow me.
Do it.
My wife and I are doing a promotion at the Secular Student Alliance. If you go to secularstudentalliance.org/Phil, if you sign up or increase your existing monthly contribution by $10 or more, if you do that, $10 or more monthly contribution to the Secular Student Alliance, you have to go to that webpage, secularstudents.org/Phil. My wife and I are going to give $150 so that a student can get into the leadership conference this summer. It'll cover their board, the room, and the food that they would need to be at that conference for the weekend, $150. Our cap on this is $10,000, which works out that we will be able to fund 66.6666 students. We'll probably round it up to 67. But that's a whole bunch of students that are going to go and learn leadership skills, and they're going to go to a conference and hear great speakers, and they're going to get that reassurance that they're not the crazy ones, right? And they're going to learn leadership skills and development skills and communication skills and all these things to help out other students. And then hopefully when they get out of college or graduate school, they can continue that trend. And I'm kind of investing in the future because I'm pretty sure religion is not going to go away in my lifetime. So this is an opportunity for you to pay it forward if you've done okay. I mean, if you don't have any money, don't go. Fine. Yeah. But if you can swing it, if you can skip out on a coffee or two every month and give $10, I think most of you could probably do $25, honestly. Secularstudents.org/Phil, and go sign up. and every person that does it $10 or more, or if you already are doing it and increase it by $10 or more, we are going to contribute enough money for a student to get to the conference. Well, to get a ticket into the conference, pay for their room and their food. So that's just something I wanted to make sure we threw out there so people can go do that and contribute and help out.
I posted a link in chat directly to secularstudents.org/Phil.
Thank you.
Sweet. Let me get
Can't
this
believe I
done.
almost forgot that.
Yeah, it was one of the. Phil was, when I reached out, I was like, yeah, let's get you on the show. Hey, I'd like to do this. Yes. And then we almost completely forgot. So here we go. $10 for Storm Chaser Noah. Happy belated birthday, Matt. Thank you. Sorry I missed most of last week's shows. Well, that's just terrible. Go back and watch them all. And, no, you're fine. Love the purple and orange snakes. Yes.
I thought you were talking about their shirts.
About the Inceptions and stuff. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
There we go.
California, I guess. California, Canadian money. $27.99 from Kathleen Moncrief. Jesus was going to be named Brian, but Mary stubbed her toe when she was naming him. All right. That's what I heard. There's even a movie about that, about his life. Brian, the life of Brian.
I'm aware of the life of Brian.
You're with me there? Good.
He's a very naughty boy. $10 from our Abu Sahan. How is atheism, not believing there's a God, different than arguing from incredulity? Well, atheism is the position. Arguing from incredulity would be the potential justification from it. Serious question about what are the distinctions, or is that a flawed comparison? It's absolutely a flawed comparison. You're comparing a conclusion with one potential way of reaching that conclusion. And so an argument from incredulity, an argument from ignorance is asserting that something is true until somebody proves it false. An argument from incredulity is essentially saying, this is the explanation. I can't think of a better one. And so atheism isn't claiming that we have an explanation or what the reason is. So atheism is, I don't believe that there's a God. And it's not because I can't think of a better reason. It's because the theistic claims haven't met their burden of proof. So it's not only
you could have an atheist who foolishly says, I just can't believe that a God could exist. Okay, well then maybe that would qualify. But in and of itself, not believing in a God is not incredulity at all.
Boom.
Are there more?
There are more. I'm doing two things at once all of a sudden.
Yeah.
1,500 from Aspor Bjarni. A question for Phil. Here, I'll read you your question, Phil. Since you mentioned you're a resident of Orlando, I'm going to be in Orlando, Florida next month, staying for about a week. Do you know any must-see attractions or tourist spots?
I heard this place called Disney. You might want to check that out.
No. If you go to Universal Studios.
If you want the Disney experience without the $200 cover charge, you can go to Disney Springs, which is the Disney Mall. It's got all the same stuff, all the same shops, a lot of things you can buy and enjoy, and a lot of really nice restaurants. There's a Cirque du Soleil show there. There's a Hard Rock Cafe that has some of the most amazing concerts. We went with our daughter, took us to see, I can't remember her name, I think it's a Brazilian performer there. Absolutely fantastic. So much to see and do in that theme park that's got no cover charge, free parking. You can even charge your car. But outside of that, there's so many restaurants, like Matt said, Universal. If you really want to get a feel for Florida, look around for places that do airboats and go look for crocodiles. Alligators. Lots of alligators. It is really, really fun to be in a high-speed airboat and just fly across the water and then have them pull up and stop and find alligators in the water. There's a couple parks in the area that do zip lines and or treetop adventures where you get in a harness and they hook you up to a cable and you go from tree to tree. Those are a hoot. Really good fun. Lots of lakes if you like boating. Not really my thing. I try to not surround myself with things that can suffocate me. Boating is great. No real beaches in Orlando. They also have this weird thing, Matt. I don't know if you experience it in Austin. You probably do. When they put down a new road and they put down the blacktop, it just stays there. It doesn't do that in Chicago. It gets crumbly and gets holes in it and everything. Weird.
It does it a lot in Texas. We have a road back here where I think they put in some faulty blacktop because it did not stay there. Funny you should mention it. You would not want to ride on this road for sure.
Yeah.
Also, this isn't Orlando either, and it's not even particularly close to Orlando, and it isn't the best time of year to do it. But if you ever have the chance to go to Crystal River, Florida, in late December, early January, you can relatively inexpensively go out and swim with manatees. And I highly recommend it. I rank it higher than the total eclipse that I experienced on Monday, just for me personally.
There you go. Yeah. 1999 from Jason. Jason. Clever. Small contribution to support all you do. Feeling you on the oral surgery mat. Oof.
Yep.
There you go.
It's going to be good. I was blessed with some mildly bad genetics with regard to my teeth, and I used to chew tobacco. I haven't in many, many, many years, but I did some good damage, and so I've managed to crack and destroy a few teeth, and we're going to take care of that.
Nice.
Probably in May, but yeah, I'll get done with all the reptile stuff in April, and then I'll have to take a week or so off in May, but it'll all be for the better. I'll smile bigger and brighter, and then there will be more new names for people to call me. $10 from Lucky to Typewriter. Hopefully this clarifies. I'm almost 40, and I basically have an apartment and a job. I feel like capitalism is an organized conspiracy to keep certain people down. Why am I right or wrong? Thanks, guys. Well, I would say you're wrong in the sense that I think it's absurd to call it an organized conspiracy. That gives too much credit.
I think it's an unintended side effect. It's not that they want to keep you down; they just don't give a shit. And if companies can make maximum profit and you do well, they would support that. If they can make maximum profit and you not do well, they're okay with that, because that's what capitalism is. And I love when people talk about capitalism in a Pollyannish kind of way, that it magically solves all the problems. It doesn't. It's a pretty good system for the overall growth and strength of an economy. It's way better than almost any other choice. But I'm a big fan of regulated capitalism, because the inevitable result of unregulated capitalism is monopoly, because everyone's playing to win. And when someone wins, like the board game Monopoly, is not much fucking fun anymore. And the adventure is getting rich and taking power and control. And then once someone's done that, it sucks for everybody else. So you need to have something in place, a lot of things in place that make sure companies don't pollute, make sure companies don't put workers at extreme risks where they're going to lose hands and limbs and eyeballs. And there needs to be something in place that makes sure the companies pay a living wage. Like I talked about the McDonald's thing, I think earlier, when people are all upset. In my opinion, if a business cannot financially succeed without exploiting its workers, it shouldn't be a fucking business. But that's just me. They've got to find another way to do it. But particularly when you have companies where the executives are making millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars a year in bonuses and stock and all these other things. And God forbid the workers get a $2 hour wage, and people go, it's wage inflation. I have never heard CNBC once fucking bitch about wage inflation caused by an executive pay going up. So it's wages. Why does it all go to 1 or 2 or 5 people and not to 10,000 people? All right. Sorry. There's my little rant.
Yeah. There was a good meme I saw the other day. It was like, explain how trickle down economics works. And it's like, okay, first thing is the rich people get all the money.
Yeah.
That's the end. Nothing else happens after that.
Yeah. I call it trickle on.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things like when they bought out the banks, they give all these allowances and credits and things for businesses to stay in business. That's great and all, but one famous billionaire once said, I can only buy so many jeans and tennis shoes. If you were to pay people more that are at the bottom level of income, they can buy a lot of fucking jeans and a lot of shoes because a lot of people would have money. So if you give $1,000 to 1 million people that have next to no money, they're going to spend it. If you give $100 million to someone who already has billions, they're just going to pocket it and go, oh, well, look, I have more money. Yeah.
Congrats. Hey, last year I only made $38 billion, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, how many yachts can you buy before you just really wouldn't possibly even want another yacht? Like, well, it makes me wonder.
I can't remember the name of the book. Go ahead.
For the super billionaires that have their own island and planes and multiple yachts. Yeah. What is it like for Bezos, if he's going to make more money in 18 seconds or 18 minutes or whatever it is than most people are in their lifetime? How does he spend his day? Because there's not enough time in the day for him to shop around and buy even the really, you can only buy so many yachts in a year doing any attempt at researching stuff like that.
Yeah, there is a very phenomenal difference. And this is something I deal with sometimes with clients, but on a much smaller scale. But a lot of people think of money as something that you get so you can pay your bills. And that's like 95% of the population, 99% of the population. But then there's other people, once you get to enough money, you don't need more money. You want more money. You want more money to say that you have more money. It becomes, that's the purpose of making the money, is to be able to have more of it. It's like racking up points in Tetris. It doesn't really mean anything, but now it's the game that you're playing. And the game that you're playing is, how can I make more money? How can I strategize? How can I avoid taxes? How can I do this? How can I do that? And we need to make sure these people are aware that that's a game without value for its society as a whole.
Like,
pardon?
Could you just say, create a solid gold plaque that says, congratulations, you won capitalism.
Yeah.
You're no longer allowed to make any more money. And then they'll have, we'll give them a plaque to put up in each of their homes, and we'd still come out ahead of them continuing to make money. All right, one last super chat here. $10 from Dan H. Bites. Libertarians and conservatives can go back to the Gilded Age and see how great unchecked capitalism is. I don't even know that I have to say anything or anything else. Look, we need to wrap up the show because we're running into 18 minutes past my supposed hard deadline. So first of all, huge thank you to Phil for coming on the show this weekend. I really wish we had gotten a theist caller that was going to defend, theism without, not understanding the basics of a logical argument or how to determine whether there is a grounding or whatever else. But
I was just going to say that the ultimate grounding of reality is going over to secularstudents.org/Phil.
That's on my list $10 here. Or more.
Oh.
See, so Transatlantic Calling shows tomorrow starting at 2:00 with Dr. Ben and Katy. Sunday show is Erika and Aron for this regular Sunday show. The After Dark is going to be Forrest and John Gleason. Skeptalk on Monday is going to be Shannon and Dr. Aron Adair. Tuesday is Eve and Alyssa on the new awesomeness show, Chewed Gum. Do not forget, if you're able to, go to secularstudents.org/Phil and contribute there to help out the Secular Student Alliance. You can also go to linemerch.com to help us out here at the line. And don't forget, patreon.com/calltheline is what we are promoting the most. It is the best way to help out right now as we deal with potential demons. We should just call it, instead of demonetization, it's just demonization.
Yeah.
Demonized. We've been demonized again. And don't forget, there's a big announcement coming later this week from Jimmy about patreon.com/calltheline. If you can get to Dallas this weekend and you are interested, or you have kids, or you want to show off or look at reptiles and everything else, Arden and I will be at the North American Reptile Breeder Convention in Dallas. Huge thank you to our call screeners, all of our moderators, and Arden down the hall. Tune into all of those other shows. Find ways to help support each other and us. And I'll see you next week. See, there's music playing. There's a list of patron producers. Steve, Olaf, and Paul, Kathleen, Galaxy Man, Airplane, Amargan, Grant and M, Brian, Vala, Kelly, Trent, Susan. I see Bethany and Jared and Larry and Worthless and Captain and Tess and Ryan and John and Panda Thomas. I see Ian and Matthew, Jenny, Sparky, Stephanie, Jeff, Paul, Causey, Cool Green,